the mindset is if I appeal to everybody, I have an opportunity to get more business. But the reality is when you try to appeal to everybody, you're not appealing to anybody. You end up coming out kind of vanilla, right? And so that's where you see people's websites and they all kind of look the same. Like nobody's really making a statement.
I have just a burning question that I've been
Yeah.
dying to ask. It's been on my mind for a little while now, just in not only with some of the guests that I've spoken with, but just as I've been in this industry in the last 6 or 7 or 8 years. I go to these different networking meetings and different things. As I'm talking to pros, I feel like we're all looking for a certain type of client,
Mhm.
right? There's this talk of the ideal client. And that ideal client typically has a much larger budget than the actual client that many of us are dealing with, right?
Yes, 100%.
And so then I talk to these people and it's like, well, I'd love to work. I'm trying to work with clients, or I'm going to price myself so that I only work with clients who are going to afford this or whatever. But then there seems to be this gap between what the client is willing to pay because of the value that the client is assigning to, you know, XYZ amount of florals, or a 10 or 20 or $30,000 planner, or a $10,000 to $20,000 venue, or catering at a certain point. There just seems to be this resistance. So do
Yeah.
you think it's imaginary? Like this client that we're all
Yeah,
trying to
that's
build
such
in
a
our
good
heads?
question. So I do think that every market, depending on where you're at, tends to have its cap, right? Like
Okay.
in a general sense. Now, that's not saying so for example, I once worked with a client in like I think it was like North Dakota. Like even though there's oil money up there, like just the way people spend, like there was a definite cap. Like she wasn't going to see the same budgets as weddings in LA. Like there was just no way, right? And I know a lot of people preach like you can make the market. And it's like I don't necessarily agree with that. Like you do have like geographic market limitations, right? All that being said, what I see in the industry is that most people, most vendors, most professionals are trying to um, satisfy the needs of the middle, right? And so and it may be a low middle, a middle middle, and a high middle, right? But most people are kind of gravitating in this middle market, which I think for like the Southern California would probably be somewhere 50 to 80,000 dollars as a budget, right? And depending on guests and things like that, it could even be 30. But I'd say around like 50 to 80 is where like a Southern California budget would fall in that like middle to middle high, right? But the problem is like the majority of the industry is trying to satisfy that, right? And so we're all competing for the same clients. And so under the example that you explained, yes, that's absolutely happening because we're all trying to go for that same client. But there's plenty of clients that are in the 100,000. It's not as many as in this, right? But you don't need 100 of these clients. You may just need like 10 of 100,000, right? And there's far few people competing for those bigger budgets. There's far fewer vendors nationwide that are trying to attract $100,000 wedding clients
Why do you think that is?
because it's safe to be in the middle. And there's two things. The mindset is if I appeal to everybody, I have an opportunity to get more business. But the reality is when you try to appeal to everybody, you're not appealing to anybody. You end up coming out kind of vanilla, right? And so that's where you see people's websites and they all kind of look the same. Like nobody's really making a statement because people are kind of like scared to say like, you know what? I only do Persian weddings. I only do Persian weddings. That's all I do because that's my specialty. I only do Greek weddings or I only do Korean weddings. Like you rarely see people kind of make a stance to say that. But the reality is if you make a strong stance, I only do Persian weddings, chances are you may be the only one in your market doing Persian weddings. And you're going to get 100% of that business versus like, yeah, maybe there's 10 million clients over here, but you're also competing with 10 million vendors, And so, yeah, maybe there's only 100 Persian weddings to be had in your market, but you have a shot at getting almost all of them, right? Like
Mm.
And so it happens with price points too, right? So I'm just going to pull numbers out of the air. Let's say in your market, there's a million vendors that are going for a million clients in that middle price point, right? So that allows you like each one wedding per person. Great, right? Now let's say in the bigger weddings, $100,000 plus, there's not a million active clients. Maybe there's only 1,000. But let's say only 10 of you guys are competing in that. Well, now you each have a chance to get 10 of them versus being in the lower market where it's one per one, right? And so everyone's kind of fighting in this middle price point. So yeah, there's only 1,000 weddings up here versus a million, but you're only your competition is so slim up here in these high price points, right?
Hmm.